So much of our society is built on trust. We trust that a person wearing a badge, someone in uniform, is there to help us, to protect us. But what happens when that trust is completely shattered? What happens when the person sworn to uphold the law becomes the predator?
Well, back in 1982, that system failed in the worst way imaginable. A California Highway Patrol officer didn't just commit a horrific crime, he used his badge and everything he'd learned as a cop to orchestrate what he thought was the perfect cover-up.
See, this story isn't really a whodunit. We know who did it. The real question, the one we're going to dig into, is how. How was a killer trained in the very methods used to catch him finally brought to justice when it seemed like he was about to walk free?
To really understand how he almost got away with it, you first have to understand the man at the center of all this, California Highway Patrolman George Gwaltney. Okay, so there is this huge disconnect with George Gwaltney. On one hand, he was the model officer. I mean, he was a former officer of the year, the kind of guy who'd give local kids a ride home. But behind closed doors, there was a much darker side. He had this secret history of pulling over women and, well, pressuring them for sex to get them out of tickets.
And tragically, on the night of January 11th, 1982, a young woman named Robin Bishop crossed his path. She was just 23 years old, on her way to pack up her life so she could move to LA to chase her dream of becoming an actress. Just full of hope. What Gwaltney did next wasn't just some spontaneous heat-of-the-moment crime. Oh no. From the second he saw Robin, he was using his police training to plan, to execute, and to conceal a murder.
His actions that night were just chillingly methodical. First, he spots Robin. Then he manufactures an alibi by giving a neighborhood kid a ride home. He pulls her over on a deserted stretch of highway, assaults her, and then, in a moment of sheer panic because another deputy's car drove by, he shoots her. And then he just switches right back into cop mode, calls it in as a suicide, and deliberately walks all over the crime scene to contaminate it. The cover-up started before other cops even showed up. He knew exactly what they'd look for. He took his gun apart to try and destroy the evidence. He sent his uniform to the dry cleaners. He even had his leather holster re-dyed, probably to hide any blood spatter. And then, the final touch? When his colleagues asked for his service revolver, he just looked them in the eye and claimed it had been stolen.
He had spun such a convincing web of lies and destroyed so much evidence that even when he became the #1 suspect, his own community, they just couldn't believe he was guilty.
So the first state trial kicks off. And despite a ton of circumstantial evidence pointing right at him, the jury was deadlocked. The vote was 8-4 in favor of acquittal. He walked. The prosecutors were stunned, but they were sure they had their man. So less than a year later, they tried him again. And what happened? The exact same thing. Another hung jury. This time, 7-5, still leaning toward letting him go. I mean, this quote from one of the jurors tells you everything you need to know. Gwaltney got on the stand and was just so polished, so convincing. His reputation as a good cop was like a shield. The people of Barstow, his friends, his neighbors, they just couldn't wrap their heads around the idea that the man they trusted was a cold-blooded killer. Okay, so with 2 mistrials, double jeopardy laws meant Gwaltney could never be tried for Robin's murder in California again. It really looked like he'd gotten away with it. But this is where the story takes a critical and honestly pretty brilliant turn. The FBI stepped in. Now, they couldn't charge him with murder, so they got creative. They charged him with a federal crime, violating Robin Bishop's civil rights. The argument was, by using his authority as a police officer, under color of law, to stop her, assault her, and kill her, he had stolen her constitutional right to life. It was a whole new ballgame. This new federal trial meant a completely new investigation, and the FBI brought in forensic tools that were light years ahead of what the local police had. Technology was about to unravel every single lie Gwaltney had so carefully built. First up, they went back to the dismantled frame of his gun. Remember, he destroyed the barrel so they couldn't do a ballistics match, but he got a little sloppy taking the gun apart. An FBI toolmark expert found this tiny, almost invisible mark on the gun's frame. It was a microscopic signature, a one-of-a-kind flaw that perfectly matched a broken tooth on a pipe wrench from George Gwaltney's own garage. Boom. The first undeniable physical link. Okay, next, the agents tackled the bullets. Now, Gwaltney had the same brand of ammo at his house, but that's not proof. So the FBI lab did something totally radical, something that had never been used in a criminal trial before.
They literally put the bullets inside a nuclear reactor and made them radioactive. This let them see the precise, unique chemical recipe of the lead in each batch. And the result? 27 bullets from Gwaltney's closet were a perfect chemical match, like an atomic fingerprint, to the fatal bullet they recovered from Robin's body. But the final, absolutely incredible piece of the puzzle came from the semen samples. See, years earlier, Gwaltney had a vasectomy and then had it reversed, and sometimes that can cause a really rare biological side effect. His body had started producing something called anti-sperm antibodies. Using a brand new test that came from fertility science, investigators found those same rare antibodies in the sample from the crime scene. The odds were just staggering. The killer had to have Gwaltney's blood type, which is only about 12% of people, and then they had to have this rare antibody condition, which is only 5% of that group. The probability it was anyone other than Gwaltney was less than 1%.
This time, there was just no room for doubt. Faced with irrefutable science that tied his wrench to the gun, his bullets to the victim, and his own rare biology to the crime scene, the federal jury came back with a guilty verdict. George Gwaltney was sentenced to 90 years. He died in prison 12 years later, still claiming he was framed. And that really leaves us with a chilling final thought. Gwaltney used everything he knew about the justice system to nearly beat it. In the end, he wasn't outsmarted by a person. He was outsmarted by microscopic marks and atomic signatures. It really makes you wonder, in a slightly different time, without those scientific breakthroughs, how many others might have used a badge to get away with murder?